Good afternoon. This is John Sabatini, and with me today is Eric Lorber and Vikas Agarwal, and we're here to speak about financial crime and AI implementation and how AI can be helpful within your financial crimes teams. So, just quick introduction. Vikas, if you don't mind, just doing a quick introduction of yourself, and then Eric, yourself.
Absolutely. Thanks, John. Vikas Agarwal. I've been in the financial crime space for over 20 years. I've had the opportunity to help remediate several GSIP programs, as well as being seconded as the head of compliance technology and analytics at a global bank. I've also led our financial crime unit and our risk and reg practice, and currently serve as our advisory CTIO focused on AI transformation.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Vikas. Great to be here. I'm Eric Lorber. I'm a partner working on financial crimes at PwC. I lead our sanctions regulatory practice here out of the United States, working like Vikas primarily with large financial institutions on sanctions remediation and transformation projects. I'm former U.S. Treasury, so was a senior advisor to the Undersecretary for Terrorism and Financial Intelligence before pivoting to consulting. So looking forward to the conversation today.
Okay, well, super to have both of you here, and the expertise is going to shine through. Um, Eric, why don't we start with you? Just given the regulatory background that you have, and some of the positions that you've had in government, it would be helpful for you to just give a little bit of a background on what you're seeing and hearing in the regulatory space and what the priorities are going to be going forward.
Yeah, thanks, John. So I will say this administration and the Treasury Department in this administration really is focused, as many of you probably know, on deregulation and limiting the regulatory burden, including in the financial crimes compliance space. This has been sort of evidenced through multiple speeches over the last few months by senior Treasury Department officials. And I think, frankly, this translates over into some areas for technological innovation, including AI as well. There's a general consensus, I think, within Treasury and within the regulatory community right now that maybe some of the burdens that financial institutions are bearing related to compliance may not be as cost effective, may not be as targeted as they should be, and I really think that opens the aperture for financial institutions and others to develop and deploy new technology and new tools, including AI. And I think there's probably an increased receptivity by regulators, by examiners, to seeing those tools in practice in a way that probably didn't exist, 4 or 5 years ago. So I actually think it's a very exciting time for those of us in compliance who are thinking about ways to, reduce sort of the burden that compliance can sometimes create on large companies.
I think that's a great point. We keep on hearing that from our clients. People want to take advantage of this moment. And I continue to hear things like this could be that Six Sigma moment where people are looking at process reengineering and leveraging AI and other automations and technologies to do that. Vikas, you've done a lot of that work. Would you mind just talking to us a little bit about where you see the biggest bang for your buck when it comes to AI? What types of topics within financial crime could be most suited for this?
As I look at it, there's not a part of the program that AI doesn't touch and help you start to transform. So I think some of the traditional stuff where I think AI is going to make a huge impact is transaction monitoring, the KYC processes, things that use technology, and things where you have large investigative functions to begin with, where AI can help write narratives and help do the stuff to wrangle data together and produce the summaries that you need to describe what may be suspicious or what might not be suspicious. But I also think you look to some of the traditional advisory functions and the risk functions, and you think about a risk assessment. And the goal of a risk assessment is to identify top risks, and AI can help you do that. And the goal of an advisory function is to maybe answer complex questions about sanctions policy or interpretation of where you can do business and where you can't do business. And AI can really help you do that as well. So you have to really look at it across the spectrum. The last thing I would mention is I think AI is an awesome safety net. And I think it's a great place to get started when you think about just use AI to ask it if any of your clients are clients you should be worried about, or if there's anything suspicious in all of your transactions. And it becomes a little bit like this fourth line of defense that could help you figure out where your controls might not be working properly. And it's a fail fast method to just really try it out.
I love the idea about the fourth line of defense. You and I have talked about that a little bit, and it does seem like it could be used in a way that's much more, innovative than what we've seen before. Eric, what do you think the reception would be from our clients when you start thinking about automation, leveraging AI, almost using it as a subject matter expert. Like, what kind of confidence do they have in leveraging these types of technologies?
Yeah, so I think it's definitely developing and it's pretty significant at this point. I will say that most of the clients I've spoken with who are implementing AI tools, as well as the regulators that we've spoken with on this, feel comfortable using the tooling for quite a bit of activities as long as there is a human somewhere in the loop conducting, for example, quality assurance, making sure that the decisions that are being made are the right decisions, kind of at the end of the day. So it's not, I would say that most of our clients and the regulators as well are not saying, hey, go out and deploy, AI models and fire and forget and let them run sort of ungoverned or, unsupervised. But certainly, for example, to Vikas, your point, if you're asking questions on complex sanctions issues, trying to get a sense of, hey, do we think this is permissible or not? AI can be highly, it can create extreme efficiencies. At the same time, you are going to probably want, in many instances, sort of a senior expert in the room making the final call to make sure that it's right. But I do think that it's really sort of increased the efficiency for day-to-day processes that would otherwise take hours, depending on what it is for compliance staff.
Is there a concern of over reliance? Like, I hear all the time that you have to have a human in the loop, and makes a ton of sense. QA, make sure that you're looking at it, make sure it's not hallucinating, it's not giving you bad information. But at some point, when the AI is right, 95% of the time, there's an over reliance sometimes. Is there a concern around that? I mean, maybe that's for you, Vikas.
I really think it's about the same way you think about over reliance in your own organization. You could make the same call for an associate, a manager, somebody that you're relying on to get information and make a decision. And AI is another team member. And AI is another voice and an input that you put through your set of controls and your effective challenge. Like Eric said, it's something that amplifies you, not replaces you. And it's someone that's around the same structure that you would challenge a team member who gives you an idea and a thought. And as long as you're applying those same principles, I think there's so many ways for AI to become a 10x amplifier of your team.
Vikas, when you were giving a number of examples on the usage of AI, you talked a lot about subject matter expertise. You talked about chatbots. We hear a lot about agentic AI, and what that's going to do to automation and how easy that is to build. Can you give us some specific examples of where we've actually done that using automation, and that's taken down the cost or taken out, people, and have really helped our clients in that regard?
Sure. So as you think about agents, we think about the framework of think, act, plan, and learn. And you go through that life cycle with the technology and with something that's going through this loop and doing that in some way. So you think about, something that may be looking at your payments. And in the thinking part of it, it's really analyzing your whole payments that what all the payments that you do. So it understands the profile of payments. It understands the statistics. It understands the standard deviation, the averages, how they automatically group by clients. You don't even have to tell it. You just have your payments and it kind of knows and it's able to think across as you get new payments what that profile looks like. And then you think about the next act is act. So you may say, based on your thinking, identify the most anomalous payments that I have and act on that for me and take it through a cycle and describe why it was anomalous, what research you did both externally and internally to do that. When you get to learn, an analyst may give that answer a thumbs up or a thumbs down, or it may rate how effective it is. So the agent starts to learn to say, well, what did I do right or wrong there? And then it starts to plan, what it's going to do as it evaluates the next set of payments that it's getting. And that's really the full life cycle of an agent that's continuously working, a human that's giving it input, and how it just continues to evolve and become smarter and smarter over time.
That's really helpful. Eric, one of the things that you said at the start of the call is, you talked a bit about, the regulatory environment and how that might be shifting, and maybe a little bit, less pressure from an enforcement standpoint. And some of that's yet to be seen, I think. But when it comes to other areas, there does seem to be a number of other areas that are cropping up that seem to be very important for the new administration. Things dealing with national security, import and export controls, obviously the changes to some of the sanctions, that are out there, the tariff policies, crypto, right, fraud, waste, and abuse. There's a lot of things out there that are still being highly emphasized. Can you just comment on, what you're hearing from our clients in those areas and what they're most concerned about?
Yeah, absolutely, John. And we can link it back to AI as well, because there are a couple of key areas that are administration priorities that our clients are quite focused on. So perhaps the most notable one is cartel activity, transnational criminal organizations, drug trafficking. Many of the red flags related to this type of activity, or the sanctions flags, are things which are well hidden. It's difficult oftentimes to determine and detect transactional activity, and AI can oftentimes be the tool that helps identify that in a way that's much more efficient than a traditional transaction monitoring screening. The other thing that I'll say on AI and how it's sort of impacting an area of focus of the administration. So the administration has focused a lot of its sanctions activity on Iran in the last few months. You know, we're in maximum pressure campaign number 2, which is a big priority of the administration. One area within that campaign has been a focus on trade finance and the sale of products from Iran to China and to other areas, including oil and gas. One thing AI can do, and Vikas has shown me this model, it's amazing, is it can help, for example, identify errant trade routes, different types of trade based money laundering activity that you wouldn't really be able to see if you didn't have models in play, or it might take you a long time to be able to pick it up, but it can sort of identify these red flags much more quickly and with a degree of granularity and accuracy that's really quite impressive. It's really cool to watch. So I do think the new technology and innovation will be helpful in helping detect and prevent many of the administration's regulatory priorities right now.
That's fantastic. Hey, Vikas, a lot of what Eric was just talking about, we've been talking to financial crime leaders and experts for years, right? 15, 20 years now. And what's come up consistently is the need to have better alerts. And we talk about behavioral, analytics and behavioral models as a result of getting better alerts. Can you talk about whether this technology is going to help us move in that direction and get better alerts using behavioral models? Because I know that the older way of doing things, when it's just more black and white models, they've been a lot more difficult to get more powerful alerts or more meaningful alerts.
I would say two things. I think they're going to absolutely need to. And the why comes back to, like, not only is AI going to be used to detect money laundering, but AI is going to be used by the criminals to actually engage in money laundering. So you think about deep fake KYC evasion. It's a service that people are offering. Like on Telegram, you can go get generative AI kits that spin up realistic passports and driver's licenses, and we're seeing a huge uptick in SARS based on deepfake onboarding attempts. We're seeing more business email compromise and executive impersonation scams that move into a video call that allow people to trick people into wiring, millions of dollars outside of accounts. A lot going on with the advent of crypto, and you think about what's happening with crypto mixers and other areas in crypto that AI is really fueling the trading on, and how people are using different wallets and how they're using token markets to clean value on areas. And that's going to require more monitoring. And then I think there's a whole area of social engineering and microstructuring that really allow kind of people to try to evade the classic detection techniques that we've used for the last decade. So then when you think about that, AI is going to need to up the game in monitoring. And you're going to have to, the same way we don't fully understand the black box of a transformer model, we don't fully understand the ways that we're going to get attacked. And you're going to need those things to come up against each other to find suspicious activity in a way that will, I will be honest, is going to be difficult to exactly explain what's happening, to a regulator the way we understand it today.
This discussion is deep, and there's a lot to think about, in terms of how to address some of the concerns and issues that are out there, using AI within the financial crime space. How could somebody get started? Like, if they bought into what you've said, and through the discussions that we've been having, a lot of the most senior people are talking about this being a ripe opportunity for AI for so many different reasons. It's highly complicated. You've got to be able to go through so much data in a small amount of time. The false positive rate is just so high. The need for behavioral models, like all of this, is leading towards the need for better AI models. So if people are bought into that thinking, what should they do first, right, to think about bringing this forward?
I always think about it in two categories. One, there's things that you always did at home where you weren't on your computer's network, but you did research on a topic. You went to learn more about AML. You went to learn more about sanctions. The same way you would Google a topic, try using AI to ask questions that are your own personal questions that are fulfilling your own personal curiosity in some way. And that's a great way just to do something in a way that's just a research based activity, the same way you would have done that with a Google search before. And you kind of start to see the power of AI. Then when you think about your own environment, you do have to create safe, secure, responsible environments in which you can experiment in. And we advise our clients to really set up those sandboxes, work with one of your hyperscaler partners, work with one of the major LLM providers, and they can set up a secure infrastructure where now you can start to ask questions that you don't want being in the public domain in any way, that you want your data and your information protected if you're going to drop in a set of transactions, or maybe you're going to ask a question about a client or transaction, but know that that question itself is secure, and start to set up those sandboxes that allow you to do that. And I think those are two simple steps that really get you started.
Eric, I'm curious about any final thoughts that you might have around this. And if you're completely bought in, I know you've got a very strong regulatory background, and I can see a lot of people could be questioning the effectiveness of a tool like this. Like, just what's on your mind as you wrap this up?
Yeah, I mean, I think in my mind, the key to doing this successfully and getting regulatory buy-in for it and regulator buy-in for it is, to Vikas's point, kind of doing it slow and taking it step by step. So a couple, obvious use cases: using AI for, advanced investigations or for investigations teams, using AI for, maybe low risk level one alert clearing, things which you can kind of in pilot programs where you can really sort of modulate how extensively it's being used, and you can exercise and show that you're exercising really significant control over it and oversight over it. I think in my mind that will get regulators quite comfortable with the approach. I mean, John, candidly, there's a little bit of a mindset that there has been over the last few years from major banks of, I'm not going to be the first one to take that step. I'll be the fast follower once someone else goes ahead and implements. But I do think we're in that change period now where regulators are more receptive to it. And if you can show that you're taking responsible steps to implement it in key areas, I think that's going to resonate really well.
Eric and Vikas, thank you both. I think the point that you're making about being a fast follower, I don't think that's going to be good enough going forward. So very much appreciate your thoughts on this, and look forward to talking to you guys soon.
This podcast is brought to you by PwC, all rights reserved. PwC refers to the U.S. member firm or one of its subsidiaries or affiliates, and may sometimes refer to the PwC network. Each member firm is a separate legal entity. Please see www.pwc.com/structure for further details. This podcast is for general information purposes only and should not be used as a substitute for consultation with professional advisors.